Hello there, I'm your host Dan Rojas, and I'm going to be teaching you today how to make your own windmill blades. Now, we're going to have two techniques today. The first one is for the really large 8-foot blades up to 16-foot blades. The other one is for the smaller models that can be made out of scrap wood. You can use those for RC planes or even small 36-inch blades. I'm also going to be showing you at the end of the video how to make a quad blade, how you take two blades and attach them together. So we're going to get started. The first thing that we're going to start with is the larger blade, which is made out of a 2x4. Now when you select a 2x4 at a home improvement store, it's very important that you have a very straight piece of wood. I'm going to show you a really simple trick on how to pick a straight piece of wood at the hardware store.
Okay, all home improvement stores have one of these, a concrete floor. The floors are usually poured professionally there, so they're usually perfectly straight and leveled. Fortunately, the building that we have is the same way. Now, when you're at a home improvement store, you want to find a piece of wood that doesn't have a lot of knots in it. That's important, but you also want to make sure the wood's straight. So an easy way to tell is just take the 2x4, look at it, and you'll be able to tell whether it's, not in really bad shape. But to make sure that you get the micro straight as possible, lay it flat on the ground, and use the floor as a guide to see how straight it is. Now this piece of wood appears to be pretty straight. There's a little bit of a bounce there. That'll probably be okay, but this piece right here is perfectly flat. Now, once you have one perfectly flat piece of wood selected, if you want to get another one, you just simply use that piece of wood, and this is the sound that you want to listen for. If they snap together, that's good. So, use the floor as a guide for straightness. You can check all angles. It's going to take you a little bit longer than normal, but it does work very well. I have here two different types of 2x4s. Now, they're not actually 2x4s. 2x4s, their true measurement is 3.5 inches across by 1.5 inches deep. So that's important to know when splitting wood down the middle or anything like that. For this, you don't really have to know it. It's just good food for thought. I have two different types. This is a pressure-treated piece of wood, and this is just a raw piece of pine. Now, I prefer this, the raw, because you can add your own sealer and do that. Pressure-treated is good because it's going to last longer, but we're going to be coating this with a clear coat varnish that's going to protect it. Pressure-treated wood has a tendency to curve a little bit after you cut it and do some weird things. So, it's up to you. You can use these, they will work, but just be warned about that. So we're going to use the raw pine. The piece of wood that I've selected actually has some knots in it. Now, I chose this piece of wood because if I run into any problems, the knots fall out, then I can show you how to correct that problem should this ever happen to you. You want to go to the hardware store and pick the straightest piece of wood with the least knots. That's gonna help you out so much in your project. Regardless of which home improvement store you buy the wood from, be sure to measure the wood because an 8-foot piece may actually be a little bit longer or a little bit shorter than that. The piece that I'm using is a stud that is 92 5/8 of an inch long. Now, halfway point for this is 46 1/4. So I'm going to measure for the halfway point of this 2x4. If you use an 8-foot piece, then your center would be 48 inches. 10-foot piece, your center would be 5 feet exactly, or 60 inches. So I'm going to mark my wood at 46 1/4 right there. It's going to be the perfect halfway point. I'm going to put a mark on the ruler. It's actually a little bit more than 46 1/4. Now I'm going to take a T-square and line it up. That way I have a nice, perfectly straight line. We're going to draw the line down the center. And then we're going to flip the wood over, and we're going to repeat the process on the opposite side. We're going to measure from the same end over to the center. Then we're going to mark our wood. And we're going to draw our next score line with the T-square again. What this is going to do is give us perfect center on both sides. Now what we need to do is find the center this way. So since the 2x4 that we're using is 3.5 inches,
actually just a hair over it. So we're going to divide half of 3.5 is 1 3/4. So we're going to mark our 1 3/4 spot. You only need to do this on this one side because this is where your drill hole is going to be. So we're going to just make a little X right there so we know that that's perfect center for this piece of wood. Now we've got our wood centered perfectly. What we need to do next is decide how big the hub portion of this is going to be. I like a nice 1 foot hub on each total length, so what we're going to do is get a ruler, and since we're going for 1 foot, we know half of 1 foot is 6 inches. So we're going to go 6 inches over here and draw a line at the end of the ruler. We're going to flip it and do the same thing here. Draw a line. We're going to take our square and we're going to go ahead and extend the lines here and here. So now we know this is center, this is 6 inches, this is 6 inches. We're going to stop our blade when we do our cut right here and leave the hub untouched. You can bring this in to about 8 inches. You don't want to go really much closer than that with the cutting part because this hub right here is going to be kind of dependent on what keeps the wood straight. I'll explain later. So we're going to flip it over and do the same thing on this side. Okay, our wood is ready to go. Okay, now if you notice, I've got my table saw here, and I've got the piece of wood that we're using running into this right here. This is going to be kind of a primitive stop guide. If your shop has real deluxe stop guides, then by all means use them. But if you don't have that, you're just using a regular table saw like me, use something sturdy that's not going to move. It could be a brick wall, it could be whatever. Something to run into so the wood stops. Now I'm going to show you exactly where you want the wood to stop on our wood over here. Okay, we want this piece to be as close to center of the outside cut as possible. Now you're going to notice this is the center right here. This is one of the 6 inch marks and the other 6 inch mark is over here. So you want the blade to come right here. When you're doing these measurements, it's a good idea to have your table saw unplugged because your fingers are going to be kind of close to the blade, so in case you accidentally turn the switch on, you don't lose a finger. Okay, I'm raising the blade to show you exactly where the blade is. Okay, we're a little bit, center is actually right here. This is the center. You can turn the blade up and see that that's center. Now, I'm going to show you how deep in this is going to cut. This saw is not going to be able to fill this whole 2x4, but that's fine because we're going to be cutting at an angle. Now, center would be right here. I like to go about 1 inch to 1.5 inches short of center. So you take your piece of wood, you figure this is the center right here. You measure 1.5 inches this way, and you just extend it out that way. You only have to do this in one part because your stop guide is going to be the same for all 4 passes. So once you have this length set, you don't have to mess with this distance anymore. With the blade all the way up and the saw off still, we're going to select our angle. Now I'm going to be cutting a 20-degree angle into this. You can cut 10 degrees, 15 degrees, 20 degrees. Once you start getting over 20 degrees, a 2x4 really isn't the choice of wood. You need a little bit thicker wood. So we're gonna go with 20 degrees on this. That's gonna give us a nice sharp blade. And what you do is you make sure that your blade's in position with it raised all the way up, and then you adjust your saw to the 20-degree setting. Got it at 20, we're going to lock it down.